Hey folks, Eric Stakelbeck here. Welcome to a special breaking news edition of the Watchman Newscast. The leader of the world's most dangerous, most lethal terrorist organization gave a 4-hour interview yesterday in which he revealed some very important information that you need to know about. Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, the top Iranian proxy, granted this lengthy interview to a pro-Hezbollah media outlet called Al Mayadeen. Now, in that interview, there were 4 major points that I wanted to share with you today that you're not going to hear about in the mainstream media. That's why I want to encourage you to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video, a new update is posted here to our YouTube channel. Folks, we're bringing you the kind of cutting edge, timely information that you're just not hearing about anywhere else. Okay, let's get into it. Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, again, the leader of Hezbollah, which, look, to my mind and for my money, is indeed the world's most dangerous and most lethal terrorist organization. We'll get into that more in a minute, why I believe that. But first, to the interview, 4 major points that Nasrallah gave. Here's number 1. He says that, and the Times of Israel, by the way, does a great English translation of this interview, which was given in Arabic to this pro-Hezbollah media outlet. Number 1 of our 4 points, Nasrallah says that Hezbollah has doubled the amount of precision-guided missiles in its possessions. Precision-guided missiles, or PGMs. Not only that, he says that these PGMs can hit any target in Israel. Here's a direct quote. I wanted to not paraphrase this for you, but give you the direct quote from Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah's mouth as translated here in the Times of Israel. Just reading this off my laptop directly. He said the number of precision missiles at the resistance's disposal. Now that's what Hezbollah, Iran call themselves, the resistance. The number of precision missiles at the resistance's disposal has now doubled from what it was a year ago. Any target across the area of occupied Palestine, Israel, that we want to hit accurately, we are able to hit accurately. Now, that's a direct quote from Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. A few things to unpack here. Number 1, why is this such a big deal? Precision-guided missiles do exactly what their name says. They hit targets with precision and with accuracy. It's a big difference from the 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah, where Hezbollah blanketed northern Israel with thousands of rockets. It was lethal. It had a lethal effect. It drove thousands of Israelis underground into underground bunkers for weeks on end across northern Israel. But at the end of the day, those rockets, as bad as they were, did not have precision accuracy. These PGMs, precision-guided missiles, again, they do exactly what their name says. If Hezbollah wants to strike a specific target, God forbid, in Tel Aviv or Haifa or elsewhere in Israel, these missiles will reach that target. It's a major game changer, and there's a reason, and we've talked about this many times on the newscast, there's a reason that Israel, a major reason, I should say, that Israel has conducted hundreds, if not thousands, of airstrikes against Iranian and Hezbollah targets in Syria over the past few years, and probably the major reason is to turn back those precision-guided missiles. Now, what Iran is trying to do is to transit these missiles from Iran into southern Lebanon. But the interesting thing here, they're very clever, folks. They're not transiting the missiles most of the time intact. What they're doing is they're shipping the parts for these precision-guided missiles that can then be assembled in Lebanon by Hezbollah once they reach their destination. So what Israel has done time and time again is struck vehicles and convoys and bases in Syria controlled by Iran that are developing these precision-guided missiles, developing the parts to assemble these precision-guided missiles. Nevertheless, according to Nasrallah, Hezbollah has apparently, in the year 2020, doubled their precision-guided missile arsenal. Very troubling. I can tell you, folks, from interviewing officials from the Israel Defense Forces for our Watchman TV show that you can see every week on TBN, Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time here in the States. Catch full episodes right here on YouTube. interviewing top officials from the Israel Defense Forces for our television show. I can tell you they consider Iran's nuclear weapons program obviously number one in terms of threats, but the precision-guided missile program is 1A in their view. That gives you an idea of how important this is for Israel. They know it's a potential game changer. It's a red line, and they will stop the development, the amassing of these precision-guided missiles into the hands of Hezbollah by any means necessary. And I think we've seen that clearly over the past few years with the airstrikes. So that's number one. From Nasrallah, the PGM arsenal has doubled, according, again, not the most reliable source, but he's out there, he's saying it, and we know they have deadly intent with these PGMs. That's number one. Number two, the other key takeaway from this lengthy interview that Nasrallah gave to this pro-Hezbollah media outlet just yesterday, Sunday, December 27th. Did you hear about in the mainstream media? I think not. The second point was that this guy is in hiding. Now, we've known that for a while, and he's paranoid. We've known that since at least 2006, since the last major go-round between Israel and Hezbollah. He's been moving from place to place for nearly 15 years now, has Nasrallah. But apparently, since the death of Iran's nuclear weapons program mastermind, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, 1 month ago, November 27th, since that date, Nasrallah has been reportedly even more paranoid and has basically been sheltering in place and not moving around at all. Again, if you are the Iranian regime or a proxy of the Iranian regime, 2020 was not very kind to you. The year began with the death of terror kingpin Qasem Soleimani taken out by a U.S. drone. And as the year drew to a close, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the leader of the nuclear weapons program, the mastermind, the father of the Iranian bomb, was also taken out. We don't know who did it. Again, Iran is pointing the finger at Israel and breathing threats of retaliation. If you want more on that, check out a newscast we did just on Saturday, December 26th. A breaking update here. Check out our archives. We've got lots more information on that. Iran's potential retaliation. But I say all that to say Nasrallah saw Soleimani, who he was very close to, by the way, and then Fakhrizadeh taken out in the same year, and he's a bit nervous, folks. So he's been apparently not moving around very much at all over the past month. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons behind this lengthy interview that he gave yesterday, 4 hours, Fidel Castro-esque, I guess you would say. But in this lengthy interview, he's trying to remain relevant. Clearly, he's saying, hey, I'm still alive. I'm still alive and kicking. Hezbollah still relevant. We haven't changed our goals at all, even though we've taken some lumps this year and the Iranian regime, our patron, has taken some major lumps this year. We're still relevant. We're still keeping up, as he says, the resistance, as he says, against Israel or occupied Palestine. So he's trying to remain relevant, but the guy's deep underground right now for sure. Number three, another interesting point from this lengthy interview that Nasrallah gave yesterday, Qasem Soleimani, who I just mentioned, the death of Qasem Soleimani. Remember, the one-year anniversary coming up on January 3rd. Interestingly enough, Nasrallah said that Hezbollah is still seeking revenge for the death of Soleimani and the leader of the Iraqi branch of Hezbollah, who was also killed in that Soleimani drone strike January 3rd, 2020. So usually you'll hear the Iranian regime saying we're going to retaliate, we want revenge for Soleimani's death. That's understood, but very interesting to see that Hezbollah, which is obviously an arm of the Iranian regime, but Hezbollah, Nasrallah is openly saying, hey, we are also going to retaliate. We also want revenge for Soleimani's death. Does that mean that Hezbollah could try and strike U.S. interests? Remember, the United States was behind the drone takeout, that strike that killed Soleimani and the leader of Iraq's Hezbollah wing. It was the United States. So who is Nasrallah threatening there when he is breathing threats of retaliation for the death of Qasem Soleimani? Very interesting. The second point that I thought was really interesting there is he said we also have not given up our goal of retaliation or revenge for the death of a Hezbollah fighter in July 2020. We talked about this on the newscast months ago now, almost a half year ago. July 2020, an Israeli airstrike in Syria took out a top Hezbollah fighter who was there in Syria. What's gone on the past few years is a kind of tit-for-tat situation where if a Hezbollah fighter is killed, Hezbollah retaliates. They have not. They tried a few times in late July and in August to infiltrate the Lebanon-Israel border, but were turned back by the Israel Defense Forces a few times. Hezbollah operatives attempted to breach that border. The IDF was prepared for them. Nasrallah says this is open-ended, these threats of revenge. Their bloodlust has not been satisfied, apparently, Hezbollah, and they are still seeking revenge for the death of a Hezbollah fighter back in July 2020. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. The last point I want to make, this may be the most fascinating. I'm going to get you a direct quote again about Saudi. Well, you know what? Here it is. We can paraphrase a bit to start. Last point here before we wrap up. Nasrallah said that he believes Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States are plotting to assassinate him. Again, I told you he was paranoid, right? He believes there's this joint plot, and what he said was, our data, Hezbollah's data, indicates that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman raised the issue of my assassination during his visit to Washington, D.C., and the Americans agreed to a Saudi request to assassinate me and that Israel would implement it. That's Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah's conspiracy theory. Take it with a grain of salt. Again, consider the source, but it shows you that paranoid mindset, number one. Hey, the Saudis, the Americans, Israel, they're collaborating to take me out. But number two, it shows you again that divide in the region. We talked about this on Saturday's newscast. Look, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United States, Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Bahrain, the Sunni Arab nations, all on one side, pitted against the Iranian axis, the Iranian regime, Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, various radical Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. And then you have Erdogan of Turkey kind of floating in and collaborating with that axis from time to time, but oftentimes also operating independently for his own radical aims. But there you have it. Once again, it shows you how the Iranian regime views the Saudis and the Sunni Arab nations. This is a clear divide. The lines are drawn. The wheat is being separated from the tares right now, and there are really no gray areas today, in my view, in the Middle East. It's very black and white. The battle lines have been drawn. So again, when Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, a major player in all of this, gives a 4-hour interview here at the Watchman Newscast, we think you need to know about. That's why we do what we do. So, hey, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so you can get these alerts on a frequent basis. Much more to come this week. I know a lot of people are saying, man, 2020 was an awful year, but 2021, clean slate, everything's going to be brand new and as good as new and back to normal. Folks, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't think so. I think that some of the things we saw in 2020 will intensify in 2021. So we need to continue to be vigilant. I don't mean to, again, distress you, and that's not what I'm here for, but the Bible says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. We think you'd rather know than not know what is happening and how it affects you. And the good news is, the great news is, God Almighty still sits on the throne. In 2020, in 2021, and beyond, he will never leave you or forsake you. God bless you. Thanks for joining us today on the newscast. Until next time, never hold your peace. Take care.